From Northern Avenue in Yerevan, this is CivilNet's Daily News Digest. I'm Nhyuthi Titizian, and here are the top stories for Thursday, March 26th. What will Armenia's position be on the referendum in Crimea at the United Nations? Also, Turkish and Azerbaijani initiatives at rewriting history are thwarted in the United States and Europe. Plus, continuing coverage of the crisis in Kesab with reactions from Armenia, the Diaspora, and the international community. And later, find out what inspired Zara Ingilizian to leave corporate America to help foster innovation in Gyumri. The UN General Assembly will be voting on a draft resolution on the Crimea today. The Foreign Ministry of Armenia has said that it will abstain during the vote. To remind our viewers, Armenia's President Serge Sarkisyan, in a telephone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin, had said that the referendum in Crimea to join the Russian Federation was a case of a people's right to self-determination through the free expression of will. Ukraine has said that the referendum was invalid and warned that Armenia's position would damage bilateral relations between the two countries, and subsequently recalled its ambassador from Armenia for consultations. The beleaguered country has circulated a draft resolution to the General Assembly declaring the March 16 vote as, quote, having no validity and cannot form the basis for any alteration of the status of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea or of the city of Sevastopol. A vote to impose sanctions against Russia is also expected to be held at the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, or PACE. It is not clear how Armenia's delegation to PACE, which is composed of both ruling and opposition members of parliament, will vote. Tomorrow, March 28, Armenia's Constitutional Court is expected to hand down its ruling regarding the controversial pension reform system that went into effect on January 1, 2014. For the past several months, protests have been taking place in the country against the new measure. The four non-ruling parties in parliament had applied to the court, citing that the new law was unconstitutional. The Constitutional Court then suspended 2 articles of the law that pertain to the mandatory component of the reform. A civil initiative, Dem.am, or I Am Against It, has been mobilizing citizens against the law. Tomorrow, a silent protest will be held outside the Constitutional Court. We will bring you extensive coverage of the protest and the court ruling. Russian servicemen stationed in Armenia with the South Military District of Russian Armed Forces began special mountain training exercises. Over 300 soldiers of the intelligence unit of the 102nd Russian military base held these exercises on Mount Pambag. The servicemen will receive training on modern radio and communication systems equipped with up-to-date navigation systems that would be used during reconnaissance operations in mountain terrain, as well as actions aimed at resisting attacks by subversive intelligence groups. Turks protested the opening of a play about the Armenian Genocide in the German city of Konstanz last week. Edgar Hilsenrath's novel, The Story of the Last Thought, which is based in a village in Anatolia during the time of the Armenian Genocide, premiered at the sold-out drama theater in Konstanz. Prior to the premiere, the theater received a number of demands to cancel the performance. Even the Turkish Consulate General in Karlsruhe asked the theater to present different interpretations of the events to the audience. Approximately 100 people demonstrated in front of the theater the day the play was scheduled to premiere. The protesters were angry over the poster for the performance, which pictured a man lying on the ground, covered in a white cloth with a Turkish flag waving above him, and featured a quotation by Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan as saying, "There has been no genocide in our history." The Armenian community of Baden-Württemberg issued a statement where it said, "Turkey's ongoing denial of the fact of the Armenian genocide speaks about its ignorance. Its demand to distort the history, even in Germany, is madness. Here in Konstanz, we witness an absurd struggle against the historic truth and the freedom of art." A key committee of the Tennessee House of Representatives rejected an anti-Armenian resolution initiated by pro-Azerbaijan forces, once again pushing back Baku's efforts to undermine the independence of the Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh. This, according to the Armenian National Committee of America's Eastern Region. The lead sponsor of the resolution, Representative Joe Towns, introduced a motion to move the resolution forward, but as it was not seconded, the motion failed. Tennessee becomes the 4th state in less than 2 months to reject pro-Azerbaijan measures, joining Hawaii, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Steve Mesrobian, ANC Eastern Region Board Chairman, said, "We welcome today's decision by the Tennessee House of Representatives State Government Committee to stand strong against the Azerbaijani government's efforts to mislead state legislators about the good people of Nagorno-Karabakh and their commitment to peace." The NCA has noted a disturbing pattern of activity. It says that in order to, quote, win over US legislators and clean up its image, last year alone, Azerbaijan spent huge sums of money flying former Obama administration officials like David Plouffe, Jim Messina, and Robert Gibbs, and over 150 US legislators, including some from Tennessee, on expensive junkets to its capital, Baku. We are continuing with our extensive coverage of Kesab once again today. Yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister of Armenia, Edward Nalbandian, was in the National Assembly answering questions from members of parliament. Regarding the crisis in the historic Armenian town of Kesab, the minister said that the government of Armenia will do everything in its power to provide assistance to the Armenians of Kesab in northern Syria, who were forced to evacuate after a Turkish-supported Syrian rebel offensive late last week. Nalbandian said that they are waiting for the return of the Armenian parliamentary delegation to understand the needs and respond accordingly. Armenian ambassador to Syria, Arshak Poladian, traveled to Latakia yesterday to meet with the approximately 600 families that were evacuated from Kesab after it was attacked by Syrian rebels. Accompanying the ambassador was the delegation of members of parliament from Armenia who had traveled to the Middle East to see what kind of assistance Armenia can offer to the displaced Armenians. After meeting with the Armenians of Kesab, Member of Parliament Samvel Farmanyan said, quote, "I should say the impression was shocking. The situation is like the one we have read about in textbooks and literature about the Armenian Genocide, in the memories of genocide survivors." The parliamentarians will present their findings and proposals to the National Assembly when they return to Armenia. A group of concerned citizens gathered in front of the United Nations and NATO offices in Yerevan yesterday to protest Turkish complicity in the attack on the town of Kesab, which resulted in the evacuations of the Armenians to the seacoast city of Latakia. The protesters were demanding that the UN and NATO send a strong message to their ally Turkey to refrain from assisting Syrian rebels and other mercenaries from attacks against the Armenians, a Christian minority in Syria. Protesters claim that this is the continuation of Turkey's Armenian Genocide program, accompanied by the silence of the international community. In view of the recent armed aggression against Kesab, the Central Executive Board of the Armenian Relief Society has decided to allocate $125,000 to the relief effort. In a press release, the ARS says, "In view of the recent armed aggression on Kesab, Syria, with obvious Turkish military assistance, which has resulted in the forced evacuation of its Armenian population, and after numerous contacts with the local and ARS Syria regional officials, the board voted to help the Kesab refugees now sheltered in Latakia with an allocation of $15,000 to cover their immediate basic needs." Reactions to the rebel offensive and subsequent evacuation of the Armenians is garnering attention around the world. The Wall Street Journal published an article yesterday by Maria Abi Habib about the rebel offensive in Kesab. Habib noted that Kesab was the last Syrian-Turkish border crossing that was still under the Syrian government's control, so the events of the last few days are symbolic for a variety of reasons, none of which were lost on the Armenians of Kesab. The author writes, "The Turkish involvement reminded them of a dark chapter in their history, the Armenian Genocide perpetrated by the Ottoman Empire in 1915. Habib goes on to say that when Ankara shot down a Syrian warplane near its border, it was more than the Armenians of Kesab could bear. She wrote, "They claimed an old foe, Turkey, was conspiring against them by allying with a new enemy, Sunni Muslim extremist groups like Nusra." If you want to read the full article, you can click on the link on your screen. Andrew Bennett, Canada's ambassador for religious freedom, issued a statement expressing concern over the attacks on the historic Armenian town. The statement says, "Canada is deeply concerned by the recent attacks by Al-Qaeda-affiliated armed groups on the ancient Armenian town of Kesab in the Latakia district of northern Syria, during which Armenian churches were reportedly desecrated and Armenians driven from their homes. The continued attacks against Christians, including Armenian Apostolic Orthodox Christians and Armenian Catholics in Syria, are unacceptable." The Armenian National Committee of Canada has issued a letter to Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper regarding the situation in the northern town. In the letter, the ANC requests that Canada call on all sides to immediately cease hostilities in the region to allow for the return of the civilian population, that Canada call on Turkey to secure its border and prevent further incursions in Syrian territory, and that Canada direct a portion of the assistance allocated for Syrian assistance to the evacuated population of Kesab, which is now living in difficult circumstances. In the letter, it says, Kesab is the last remaining outpost of the medieval Armenian Principality of Cilicia. Kesab has had a constant Armenian population for almost 1,000 years, although the area has been subject to many disputes between various countries seeking control and to significant persecution of its Armenian population during the Ottoman Empire, including massacres in 1909 and deportation of much of its population during the Armenian Genocide in 1915. Until this week's evacuation, the Christian population has never had to completely flee the region. The Armenian National Committee International and the European Armenian Federation for Justice and Democracy issued a call of action for Kesab to the heads of European Union institutions, including Herman Van Rompuy, President of the European Council, José Manuel Barroso, President of the European Commission, and Martin Schulz, President of the European Parliament. A passage from that call reads, "We ask you to intervene and stop the organized attacks on the Armenian population, a region that is since centuries predominantly inhabited by Armenians. The civilian population had to be evacuated south to safer regions along the coastlines. You have the authority today to stop Turkey's aggression against the Armenians of Kesab and stop the uprooting of a minority group which already twice has been the target of Turkey's intolerance. Giving ground assistance and intelligence for cross-border attacks to al-Qaeda extremists to target a civilian population should not be tolerated." The Monte Melkonian cyber army hacked several Turkish sites yesterday in response to the attack on the town of Kesab. The cyber army placed an aerial photo of the Turkish-Syrian border and showed the locations where al-Qaeda-linked rebels entered the town, assisted by Turkish air cover. 10 Turkish sites were hacked in the cyber attack. Turkey's foreign ministry issued a statement saying that allegations of Turkish support in providing assistance to the rebels by allowing them to use its territories or through other ways during the conflict are, quote, totally unfounded and untrue. The statement goes on to say, "We consider the efforts of such circles moving from these claims to draw an analogy between the developments in the Kesab region and the painful incidents of the past as a confrontational political propaganda attempt and particularly condemn it." The statement notes that Turkey has been most affected by the conflict and has been trying to eliminate threats and attacks against their national security, citing the March 23 downing of a Syrian warplane by Turkish Air Force. And finally, it states, "In accordance with its humanitarian and conscientious responsibility, Turkey notified the relevant UN bodies that Syrian Armenians residing in the Kesab region could be admitted to Turkey too, and protection could be provided them." Meanwhile, Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoglu made remarks yesterday that appear to take a tougher stance regarding the conflict. He said that Turkey is ready to take any measures, including cross-border military operations into war-torn Syria, against threats to its national security. According to the Hürriyet Daily, Davutoglu said, "The Turkish Republic is a powerful state and never hesitates to take any measures to protect its national security if need be." He went on to say that no one should test Turkey's determination. Turkey, who has supported the uprising against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, shot down the Syrian fighter jet that it said had breached its airspace near Kesab on Sunday. It also warned it will protect the tomb of Süleyman Shah, the grandfather of the founder of the Ottoman Empire, Osman, that is under Turkish jurisdiction but located just 40 kilometers from Aleppo, against threats from Islamic insurgents, Davutoglu said. Turkey is ready to take any legitimate step under international law if its national security, including the area where the tomb of Süleyman Shah is situated, is threatened. And in other news today, after 25 years in the corporate sector as consumer products executive in the United States, Zara Ingilizian decided to make a change. She launched a tech startup to promote economic development and job creation in Gyumri, Armenia's second largest city. I got a chance to speak with Zara at our studio here at CivilNet about changing narratives and finding her purpose in life. Take a look.
We see a lot of potential in the city. Obviously, the city has had a great deal of tragedy with the earthquake and so on and so forth. But our goal is to, obviously we recognize that and we're very empathic, but our goal is to move forward.
To watch the full interview, you can follow the link on your screen. Filmmaker Harutyun Khadan's film Hike, Escape, which is the first film from his series Endless Escape, Eternal Return, will have its world premiere at the Vision du Real Film Festival in Lyon, Switzerland. The film is nominated in the international competition section of the festival. Vision du Real is one of the most prestigious documentary film festivals in the world and tries to include independent documentary films in its main and non-competition programs to promote their dissemination. In 1988, Khachaduryan's film Gond won the jury's special prize, and his film White City won the prestigious Silver Sesterti Award in 1989. The 45th Vision to Real Film Festival will be held from April 25 to May 3. The exchange rate is up on your screen as we take a look at your forecast. Yerevan will be partly cloudy and will have a high of 21 and a low of 3. Gyumri will have a high of 14 and a low of -6. The capital of Artsakh, Stepanakert, will have a high of 20 and a low of 7. And our travel forecast takes us to the city of Bajni, where the high will be 16 degrees Celsius and the low 1. Located in Armenia's Godayk province, Bajni is nestled among canyons and rivers and has served as an important center for education since the Middle Ages. Bajni was mentioned for the first time in 5th and 6th century manuscripts written by Ghazar Barbetsi. During the 11th century, the town of Bajni was subject to the Pahlavuni and Pagraduni dynasties. During this period, King Hovannes Sampat declared that Bajni would become episcopal lands, thus making it an important center for medieval Armenian culture. Consequently, many churches and monuments were built in Bajni's surrounding area, such as Surp Astvadzadzin, built in 1031, and the 10th century Bajni fortress. In the 13th century, Bajni fell under the jurisdiction of the Zakarian dynasty. Bajni's 13th century monastery of Surp Gevor was commissioned by the Zakarian rulers. Within a century, however, the Mongolian army led by Lenk Timur invaded and destroyed the majority of the town in 1388. Today, there are many ancient medieval ruins located in the town. Bajni is renowned for its mineral waters, which is bottled and sold under the town's name, Bajni. And that is our digest for this Thursday, March 26. We leave you today with the performance by Mikhail Voskanyan and friends. Enjoy, have a pleasant day, and I will see you back here tomorrow.